Hey everybody, welcome back to my top 10 favorite films from each letter of the alphabet. Today we're doing the letter C, and this one was actually pretty hard. This is even more so than the letter B was. I went through several titles and I went back and forth, and I almost cheated. I actually almost decided like, well, maybe if I make it more like 11 titles instead of 10. I was like, no, I'm going to stick to 10 and just call it. And honestly, I still feel like I'm forgetting like a ton of movies. So without further ado, let's get started. First two on the list are kind of related, at least in my mind, and that is the two infamous cannibal films from Italy. The first one, going in alphabetical order, will be Cannibal Ferox, Umberto Lenzi's cannibal movie, and this was actually the one I saw first in the cannibal movies, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw it as a kid under the alternate title, Make Them Die Slowly. It's funny, as much as I hate aspects of these films, the real animal killings and stuff, there is just something, I don't want to say taboo, because that's not the right word. I don't know, I have a weird fascination with these Italian cannibal film. Which leads me to the next one, which is Ruggero Deodato's Cannibal Holocaust, which is probably the most notorious one. And it is honestly one of the most disturbing films I've seen. It's a film that, much like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's that realism to it that really, I think, just makes it unlike anything else you've seen. Next up on the list, going to a different direction, is Carlito's Way. This has actually become my favorite Brian De Palma film over the years. And I don't know what it is. There's something about it that has really seeped into my own work. And I don't mean like the gangster stuff or anything like that, but I mean literally like character aspects. De Palma's style of the film, the way he made it, I find it extremely inspiring every time I watch it, and I've watched it a lot. Next up is arguably one of the best films ever made, and in my opinion, if you had to do an actual list, the best Hollywood film ever made, it is Casablanca. In my opinion, really earns everything it gets, and no matter how many times I've watched it in my life, I find it just entertaining and engrossing as it was the first time I watched it. Now going to a different kind of film, next up is John Carpenter's Christine, one of my favorite John Carpenter films, which is funny because sometimes it's one that tends to get overlooked when people think of John Carpenter films. As I've mentioned before, something about obsessive characters in movies that I can relate to. I don't know what that says about me. Probably says a lot about me. This is just a film that I just really am drawn to. Next up is another cinematic classic that for me definitely earns it, especially if you're a filmmaker. I think you can even appreciate it at a whole other level, and that is Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. A film that when I was in film school, obviously, I mentioned Citizen Kane and stuff, and you can appreciate it on the technical level, but it's funny, I think the more I watch Citizen Kane, the more I appreciate it, how well the storytelling is. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked, but from a storytelling standpoint, it's the outlook on a person's life and how to define it from everyone around the person who knew them, and from different ways, people who loved him and hated him and all this kind of stuff. I just think it's an amazing film. Next up is probably my favorite Stanley Kubrick film, and that is A Clockwork Orange. And this is one that there's just something so bizarre about it. I mean, the fact that it's a futuristic film, but it obviously has all these sort of 70s, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s kind of look and feel to it. It's just kind of bizarre, but that almost lends itself to what makes it almost kind of special, kind of unique. Really? This is one I kept going back and forth on, but honestly, every time I watch it, I absolutely there's just something so almost magical about it, and that is Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And again, it has to do with a character who becomes obsessed. So make of that what you will. Here's one I actually have always loved and have actually appreciated a lot more as I've gotten older, and that is Conan the Barbarian. I appreciate it even more now from a cinematic standpoint with what John Milius was able to do by what he took from the original source material and turned it into a film, which is not very easy to do. The fact that he was able to have all of these action and magical, mystical moments, but also have the underlying meaning be so simple and so human, for lack of a better word. I don't know. I think the film is so much better than sometimes it even gets credit for. And then finally, the last one on my list, and is no surprise because I'm even wearing the shirt, and that is George Romero's Creepshow. I've mentioned how much Creepshow means to me before, so I won't go too much into it. It's one of my favorite films. It's one of the ones I saw as a kid that made me love horror. It's the film that introduced me to George Romero. The work of George Romero will always be something very special to me. And it's one of the films I've watched probably the most in my life, and one that has inspired me in so many ways, including a project that will be upcoming, which I will get into soon. So those are my picks for the letter C. Definitely let me know which 10 you would pick. Keep an eye out for the next one, which will hopefully be up tomorrow, and that'll obviously be the letter D, which is another one that's going to be hard to do. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.